With KeyShot loaded up, you'll get a menu, and from here you can select import from here or from the file menu at the top left corner. And once we select import, we're going to select our OBJ that we exported from Mudbox. Now to go through the settings when you do this, you want to make sure all these tick boxes here that you see should be ticked, and the ones that aren't ticked should remain unticked. You have no need to change the size or up orientation. And then we'll import our model. KeyShot defaults the texture to blue because originally this model had no base texture, and we still have to apply the textures that we exported. Now on the right you can see that we have the scene and the materials, and our model is located at the top. Now to access the texture settings, what we need to do is double click on the model, and the texture settings will appear in the material tab. Now it's set to diffuse. We want to change that to advanced, and from here we want to change the these are all the settings that we can play around with. So going through these, you won't have to touch labels, and you'll see we have textures here, and we want to add our diffuse map by selecting the text box. Now you can see the textures aren't correct here, and there's a reason for this, because the texture mapping type is set to box, and we want to change this to UV. And sometimes the texture won't be the right size, as we can see here. That's because it's been set to 1.5. We want it to full size, which is just 1. And you see that's changed to the correct size now. There's no bump mapping or specular map applied just yet, so we'll just have the colours. So now we'll apply the bump map. We'll be ticking the box and we'll select the bump texture. As we see, we can't see quite much at the moment, so selecting the bump map here, we can go down and start looking at the textures. And we can change the bump height here. Then you can go to a negative, so it's the opposite direction. And we'll have a look at using the brick wall as an example. We'll exaggerate that to 10, and we can see we've got quite a good bump map there at that setting there. We make it negative 10. Now it looks like the red bricks are in further on the brick wall. Now we change it back to 10. Now it's the opposite direction and they stick out. So we'll leave this at 10. And we can see how the texturing has, the bump mapping has made a big difference there. And we can see a little bit of the skin texture on the back. So now we want to add the specular map. Now the skin's just a bit more shiny. A little bit more realistic. So as we rotate the model around, you can see the effect the specular map has on it. Now at the bottom we can change the brightness of the specular map, or the brightness and contrast. You can do this for all textures. It's not making too much of a difference on the front of the brick wall. It's making a big difference at the back. So we turn off bump map and we can see what differences here we can make. So with the specular map, without the bump mapping, the specular map is not very good. With it turned on, it's a big difference. When it turned off, it's quite dull with just the bump mapping. not too much effect on the front of the bricks. It's just very slight. It's got a lot to do with the diffuse colour or the texture itself underneath. Hope you can see the difference the bump mapping makes. So having a good look at our model, it's making sure our textures are doing well. Now from the properties here, you can play around with roughness. 0 means it's a smooth surface, and anything higher than that and the surface becomes a bit more rough. And the highest number here you can have is 1. You can see the higher it is, the rougher it gets. Closer to 0, it becomes more smooth. Now you can always play around with this setting called Fresnel. See the effect this has on your model and your textures. Usually you would leave it on, but you can always it's just a tick box, so it's fine just to turn on and off just to see what effects you can get. Makes a big difference to the texturing at the back of the skin texture. But so far the textures are working well, and we'll move on to the next step.